Hey YouTube, it's Tempest CFV again. I'm doing another deck profile for Buddyfight. I haven't done a Buddyfight deck profile in a little while. But I finished this deck over the summer. I was playtesting it, and then I got really busy, and I haven't had a chance to upload it, and so now I'm finally finding time to do it. It's the Thunder Knights deck. I'm finding that it's not really relevant much anymore since Darkness Dragon World's coming out. It's still a good deck, but I'm getting bored with it, so I'm gonna be trading it away or selling it. So I figured I would just post this now so I can get it out there for anyone who might be interested in building it, because it is a very fun deck. I'm just getting bored with it for the moment. So my buddy is Thunder Knight's Broadsword Dragon. What he does is he's a 5/2/3. Pretty good stats for a size 1, and he can't be called to the center. So that's the only downside to it. I'm gonna show you the combos of this deck and why I chose him as my buddy in particular. I think ideally you'd probably want to choose the Thunder Knight's leader, Commander Farn, to be your buddy when you play this deck. Because Farn is just amazing and he's good with any size 1 that you play. The reason he's my buddy is because ideally when you play a buddy monster, you want it to be a card that you're definitely going to play in every game, so you can always get the buddy gift off. And more likely than not, when I have Broadsword Dragon, he's always going to be relevant when I play it, so it makes sense to have him as my buddy. And normally you play him alongside the big cards like Thunder Knights, Commander Farn, and Drum. So yeah, it just makes sense to have him as my buddy. But there are plenty of other options. For the size 1s, we play 4 Broadsword because he's the buddy, and his stats are amazing, so it's not really bad to play 4. The reason I usually team him up with Commander Farn is because he doesn't have move, and most of the other Thunder Knights do. And Farn will give all other Thunder Knights cards move, so it's important to team him up with something that can actually move around, because if you play him without anything else, then he's just a random 5k with 2 crit on your side lane, and it leaves your center wide open to attacks, so it's important to play him with other cards. Next is 4 Drago Archer. This card is amazing. When you call it down, first of all, it's a 2/2/2. 2 crit, 2 attack power. So its power is low, but because it's 2 crit, it can be really helpful for poking. And then his skill is when he's placed on the field, if you have another Thunder Knights card on the field, you get to draw a card. So usually you play this card again alongside Commander Farn to give him move, and then you will draw the card, do 2k, 2 crit poke, and then move to center to be a meat shield. That's about it. And then last of the size 1s are the movers. I'm playing 2 Main Gauch Dragon. It's a 4/1/4. If there's another Thunder Knights card on your board, he gets moved. And then the last card is 2 Iron Fist. He's a 2/2/3. And if there's a Thunder Knights on the board, he also gets moved. I was playtesting with I think 3 or 4 of this guy initially, because the 2 crit is really strong. And the thing is, he's a 2k. And the poke damage is like decent, but I already have Drago Archer and Broadsword for poke damage. So the 3 defense is nice, but it's also really low on power. Like, the only time you're ever going to have him be relevant is if you team him up with a Drum or a Commander Farn. And if you already have Commander Farn, then he's already going to have move, so it's kind of a waste, right? But if you have him with a Drum, then he can actually just move around randomly, you know? So he's kind of good to have. But the 2k power is really low, and he's not going to be swinging over anything. Even if you link attack, the stuff in this deck doesn't link attack for more than 7 or 8, so having him be a part of a link attack isn't really effective. So having a card like this, Main Gauch, to have a 4k power, as well as being able to place anywhere, and the 4k defense is nice as well. He's just offers a little bit more utility for the deck. Normally with this card, you will team him up with Commander Farn, because Farn also gives all Thunder Knights cards +1 critical. So it's kind of good to have him there for the extra bonus of him being a 4/2 now. And the 4k defense is nice because it's a lot beefier than any of the other size 1s in the deck. And by beefier, I mean like 4k isn't really still beefy, but if you at least use the Drago energy on it, it at least swings for 7 now. So it's a lot better defensively. Okay, sorry about that. For the size 2s, I play 4 Commander Farn. I was only playing 3 of this card initially, and then I like got the 4th one, and this deck just exploded. Like the deck is so good with 4 Farn. What he does is his call cost is pay 1 gauge. He's a 5/2/5, and then he gives all Thunder Knights cards move and an extra critical. So basically, what you're doing with this guy is on his own, you pay 1 gauge. He's 5/3/5, and he has move. So it's basically like a Drum Bunker Dragon, except that Drum has Soul Guard and 5/3/5, but he has, you know, move and 5/3/5. But the reason he's good is because you team him up with any of your size 1s. Now all your size 1s are going to be swinging for at least 3 crit, except for Main Gash, who swings for 2, and they're all going to have move, except for Iron Fist, because he had move already. So it's really important to team up your Drago Archer and your Broadsword with this card. So that's generally what my standard play with this deck is to like just play this and then play a Broadsword. So now I have 2 5k beaters with each having 3 crit and move, and then I'll have a weapon equipped. That's a lot of damage in the first turn, and you can easily link attack for 10,000 power with any of the cards in this deck. So it's very important to have 4 of this card. The next card is for Drum. This guy was initially going to be my buddy until I realized how good Farn was and how important the combos with him are. Like I said, if you have enough money to get 5 Farns and make him your buddy, do it because it's really freaking good. Otherwise, make your buddy a size 1 because more often than not, the plays you make with Farn and your size 1s are going to be your main plays. This card is kind of a backup play. He's too good to not run. What he does is you pay 1 gauge, put a card from your hand into his soul. He's a 5/2/4. He has move, penetrate, and soul guard. Now you don't have to put the card into his soul. It's not mandatory, but he loses out on soul guard. And the point of playing Drum is to have him be a mover that takes 2 hits to kill, because 4K defense is not going to be helpful for you at all. So what you want to do is have a card to put in his soul, have him be over here or over here, and then have him move to center to block 2 attacks because of the soul guard. Penetrate's also nice. It's not super relevant in this deck because normally you're gonna have enough power to swing over your opponent's monsters anyway. But it's not awful, you know. It's definitely relevant. The problem is the 5k power is really low, so unless you have like a Drago energy or unless you're like link attacking, the penetrate's almost never going to be relevant with this card. But it's too good to not play. Like you have to play 4 of this card. It's so good. Just so much value in this one card. Like I said, the reason it's not my buddy is because it doesn't really contribute to the main plays of the deck. It's more of a defensive card. So that's the logic behind that. And the last card is 2 Halberd Dragon. I just happen to have 2 of these, so I'm playing 2. It's a 6/2/6 with move. Basically, you team this up with an Iron Fist or Main Gauch Dragon for defense, because then they'll both gain their move skills. You can team them up with other cards like your Drago Archer and your Broadsword Dragon, but it's not going to be as strong. If you don't want to spend money, you can play Thunder Knight's, I think Shield Sword Dragon is the name of the card. And that card, I think, is a 3/5 size 2 with 3 critical. It's not as strong as this, but it's got the same effect as Iron Fist, where if you have another Thunder Knight's card on the board, it gets moved. So it's not amazing, but it definitely can fill the position this puts in. The thing with Thunder Knight's Halberd is that it's a 6k a beater, and nothing in this deck swings for that much. Except for the boss monster, which I'll show you in a minute. So this card is really important to have if you need the extra beat stick. The problem is it's a triple R and it's 25 to 30 bucks depending on where you're buying it from. So if you don't want to play this card, you can play other stuff. There's another card you can play. I think it's called Battle Axe Dragon. It's a 5/4/3, and it has it's a 5/3 I think size 2, and it has 4 criticals, which is amazing. But you can't play it with Farn, so you can't buff up to 5 crit. And it costs 2 gauge to play, which is really bad, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. So yeah, having anything with 2 gauge in the deck is kind of bad, except for the last card. And the last card is 2 Bastard Sword Dragon. This card is really good. I think it's underrated, personally. It's a 7/2/6 with move and double attack, and it only costs 2 gauge to play. Now there are much better cards to play than this card, but the fact is he's a Thunder Knights card, and this card can, on its own, win you the game. With the impact card. Well, it's not really an impact card, but I'll explain why in a minute. Why it does. So this card is really important for the deck. It's a random beat stick, and it's kind of beefy. It's got 6k defense, and it only costs 2 gauge to play, which is really important. And this deck builds gauge really easily, so it's not like a huge deal to have everything in this deck be super gauge heavy. Okay, so I have 24 monsters in here. That's going to be really important when I explain the main focus of the deck later. For my items, we play 2 Drago Knuckles and 3 Dragon Blade Drago Breach. I wasn't playing the Thunderblade earlier because it costs 2 gauge. This costs only 1 gauge, 1 life, and it's kind of helpful with the spells I run to decrease my life early. So you can play the Drago Breaker, or Thunderblade, whatever it's called, if you want to. I think you need to play at least 3 Drago Knuckles in this deck for it to be effective because gauge building is really important. But you can afford to get away with 2. I mean, I get away with 2 all the time. In that case, you would only play 2 of the main beats weapon. The reason you play these is because it's a 5k with 3 crit, and these are just too good to not have. These swing over most size 1 and 2s on their own. Really helpful for link attacking. And since item removal is so uncommon, even if you fuck up your formation with your monsters and whatnot, this card will still be relevant, and you will still be swinging for like 3 crit and 5 power every turn, even if your monsters get destroyed. So it's important to have these. Alright, now the last important card in this deck, everything else is basically staples, but the last important card is this, 4 Thunder Formation. This is your bread and butter for the deck. What this card does is a set spell, and then when one of your Thunder Knights cards moves, you get to charge 1 gauge. So it's really good, and basically what the ruling is if you have, let's say you have no field, and you call Farn to center, and then you call Broadsword to the left. This is the left, right? Yeah, I think this is left. Whatever, it's left or right. What you can do is, and then let's say you had Drago Knuckle equipped, right? What you normally do is if you have Thunder Formation as your set spell, before you attack, you should move your Broadsword Dragon over here, and then you can also move Commander Farn over here. So you're allowed to do that, and you're also allowed to gauge 2 cards with this skill because you just moved twice. It's amazing. So it's really builds your gauge really quickly. And since everything in this deck, all the size 2s and 3s cost 1 or 2 gauge, so it's really important to have high gauge in this deck. Now most of the size 1s and spells don't cost gauge, but it's still really good to have like gauge building cards like this. So you play this at 4, and it's also the only reason you play this at 4 is because it's also technically your impact card. So this other ability it has is called True Thunder Formation. You pay 4 gauge, destroy this card, and destroy all Thunder Knights cards on your field. So you have an open field, right? Then you mill 3 from your deck, and Superior Call any Thunder Knights cards among them as stand, and then you get to do a second attack phase. So basically what that means is you have a Halberd, let's say you have a Halberd, and like a Drago Archer on board, right? This is an awful board state, by the way. As long as you have Halberd like surviving, and you're able to build gauge with this, it's fine, right? But this is really a bad board state. But it has enough critical in it that you could push your opponent for game. So if you have like an item on the board, this might not be game. But if you have this card, you pay the 4 gauge with this, you blow up your field, you mill 3 cards, right? Now, I play 24 monsters in this deck, which means that the odds of any one of my cards having being a monster are 24 out of 50, which is about 50%. So times 3 is basically I have a theoretical probability of always getting at least 1 monster off my draw. Now, ideally, the best card to get off Thunder Formation is the Bastard Sword Dragon, because he acts as 2 swings with 7k, 2 crit on his own. But if you can pull like a Drum or like a Main Gauche or a Broadsword Dragon with Commander Farn, it's really easy to pull off the Thunder Formation Punisher impact play. Now the one problem with this is that the impact play is by no means consistent because you have to mill 3 and each card always has the probability of not pulling a monster. So you want to be careful with that. The last thing with this card that you want to know is that if you have to pay 4 gauge for this card, right? All of your size 2s cost 1 gauge. So if you mill any and you don't have any extra gauge, you can't play them. So when you cast this card, you always want to make sure you have at least 5 or 6 gauge, so that in case you do pull like a Drum or a Halberd or a Bastard Sword, you have enough gauge to call cost them. And then if you draw a size 1 alongside them, that's just butter, because now you have a full formation, right? And then the last cheeky thing you can do with Thunder Formation is if you have 3 size 1s on board for some reason, you can swing, and equip a weapon, right? And with Thunder Formation, when you clear your board state, you'll be able to clear that size 1 that was sitting in the middle, and then you can still swing with your weapon even if you don't hit anything off Thunder Formation. Which is another random cool thing you can do. Normally you won't have the 3 size 1s, but since I do play 12, sometimes it happens. So That's Thunder Formation. The reason I talk so much about this card is because I don't play an Impact. This card basically is your Impact. It costs 4 gauge to use, so that's the only reason I talk about it so much, because it's really important and it's mainly your key part of the deck. This card and then Commander Farn with any size 1. Generally your formation. Alright, so last of the spells, obviously, you play 4 green shields and 4 blue shields. I don't have any white dragon shields. I think I would play them if I could. The only problem is that mostly I will have a monster in the center generally. So I usually would rather play more like stat boosting cards rather than play a white dragon shield that will reduce damage to 0. So for my other shields, I play 3 Drago Energies and 2 Wrath of Dragons. With this deck, with everything moving around the way it does, everything like just gets together and stuff. So it just everything. Okay, let me say that again. Everything moves around, and your big cards you're gonna want to move to the center to defend yourself, right? So let's say you have Farn and you have a Drago Archer, like I said before, and you have the Drago Archer move to center, right? So he's only a 2k defense, right? But if you have Wrath of Dragon, he becomes so much more, right? So Drago Energy gives a dragon in battle 3 attack and 3 defense and counterattack. Wrath of Dragon will give a dragon in battle 6k attack and defense. So it can be a really big surprise when your opponent tries to swing into Drago Archer and they just get Wrath of Dragon immediately. So that means that it'll take 2 attacks to destroy that Drago Archer now, and if you don't have any shields in your hand, that can really help you with the defense. So Drago Energy, same thing, just a weaker boost. You play this alongside cards like Drum to prevent it from being soul guarded. Also with Drum's counterattack, I'm pretty sure you can penetrate with that. Don't quote me on that, but look it up. It might be a ruling. So if your opponent attacks your center with their center and you have Drum and you Drago Energy Drum, you might be able to penetrate off that. So that's basically all my shield cards. I play a lot of shield cards in this deck because it's really important. Like everything in this deck moves around, but you tend to run out of hand advantage really quickly, so it's important to keep your cards alive rather than let them die and try and draw more. I do play 4 draw cards though. I play 2 Drago Genius and 2 Dragonic Grimoire. Both of these cards can only be used if you have 5 or less life points, so it's important to use the Drago Breaches. Like I said, you can afford to take a little bit of damage early to use these draw cards. What Drago Genius does is it costs 2 gauge, and then you can use it to draw 2 cards, and you can only cast it once per turn. So if you have a little bit of hand advantage and you have this, you want to try and use this card to get more advantage. With Dragonic Grimoire, if you have 5 or less life, you can use this card. Discard your entire hand and draw 3 cards. So I play 2 of each because this card's relevant if you have less cards in hand. This card's relevant if you have more in hand. Generally, this card's going to be more helpful late game, so it's going to be more helpful mid game. So that's generally how that goes. You can play other anti-meta hate. You can play like Dragonic Thunder and shit if you want. But I think the draw power for this build in particular is really important in case you have to use Drum. So that's my opinion on it. Let me show you the side deck I have really quick because I do have a side deck for it. Yeah, okay. So we play 2 Inferno Armor Dragon. This card is amazing. I would main deck it if it was a Thunder Knight, but thank God it's not. Otherwise, I'd be too broken. It costs 2 gauge to play, and then you put 2 cards from the top of your deck into his soul. He's a 7/3/7. What he can do is, when he's called, if there's an Armor Dragon card in his soul, you can destroy an opponent's monster. And then his other skill is you can remove 2 from his soul to destroy an opponent's monster. So you can destroy 1, sometimes 2 cards with his skill, and he's a 7/3/7, so that's really good. You basically use this to kill off big shit, like Dual Seeger. That's kind of this world's worst matchup, is Ancient World, and you can also use it to slow down Dungeon World and shit. Play 2 Dragonic Thunder. You pay 1 gauge and destroy a size 1 or less monster in your opponent's field. Helpful against Dungeon. Usually you play this against Dungeon World because it's like an extra shield. It's not amazing. It's as amazing as like Pillar of Fire or like anything Darkness Dragon World has, but it's still a pretty good card to have. 2 Dragon Crush. This card lets you pay 2 gauge to destroy your opponent's weapon. Usually, I don't really know what side it's against, but it's just a really good card to have because sometimes there's like really broken weapons, like Glory Seeker. You know, Brave Equipment Glory Seeker is a really annoying weapon. Or like even the Soma Sword for that card, or like Danger World. Danger World needs their weapons to equip to win. So like this is really good against the Ace deck. 2 Day of the Dragon. This card you pay 1 gauge, destroy all your opponent's monsters, and then you can't attack. So this card is bad with the Thunder formation because even if you cast it, you can do the second battle phase, but you still can't attack. So basically, you use this and then attack with your weapon and then pass, basically. So use this on important board wipes, usually against Dungeon World to destroy all of their big size ones, and maybe against Legend World for their hero cards. But there might even be better stuff to side than that. That's what I have, so I side it. And the last card is 2 Drago Anthem. It's a 5k item with double attack. Now you can only double attack the center with this card, but generally, if your opponent has a big monster in the center, you can link attack twice with this card to get rid of it. So like your opponent has a Dual Seeger Spartan, I think is the big one. You can just swing at this once with link attack, and then swing at it again with link attack, and then destroy it immediately. If your opponent doesn't have 10% force field, they basically lose. So that's good. It's also free poke damage, so if you want to just take out the monster in the center, it basically gives you penetrate, so you can swing in with it again. And it also gets rid of pesky cards with Soul Guard, like Drum, Brave Drum, Thunder Knight's Drum, anything with Soul Guard, really. And the reason I say Drum is because that's the main card that people play with Soul Guard. I mean, there's other cards too, but like Dungeon World will play Drum, Dragon World will play Drum, Legend World has other cards, but most of the cards from other world that have Soul Guard are big enough that you need to link attack over them with something else. So yeah, that's the deck. If you like it, give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more, be sure to subscribe. And I'm going to be posting hopefully a Dungeon World deck profile pretty soon. Yeah, no promises, but hopefully pretty soon. So stay tuned for that. And subscribe if you want to see more, and leave a comment if you have any questions or suggestions. Thanks for watching.